I was going to be introducing Mayor Elorza, but he's been detained. He's been another excellent partner for Grow Smart Rhode Island. So I am going to, my name is Scott Wolf. I'm Executive Director of Grow Smart Rhode Island. I shouldn't assume everybody knows who I am, but I have worked with many of you. So I'm going to go right into some reflections of mine on the smart growth movement, informed by many of you and my staff. And then we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, Mike Lydon, have our response panel, go on to workshops, awards lunch, and it's going to be, I think, a very fruitful, stimulating, high-impact day. I think our movement and our state have been through a lot over the last several years, but we've weathered the storm well, and as the governor has indicated. And I think we're poised for a period of significant community revitalization, expanded economic opportunity, and safeguarding of our beautiful and exceptional resources and soul. To ensure we seize this moment, though, we will need an abundance of what I call the 4 C's, and I'd say the governor really touched on many of these. And those are cash, capacity, creativity, and coordination. And I'll speak shortly about Grow Smart Rhode Island's recommendations for making the most of the state's current circumstances. But first, I want to remind you kind of what our essence is, what we stand for and strive for. We have an ambitious multi-issue policy reform agenda that is grounded in a basic conviction, and that is that Rhode Island has huge untapped assets, although we're starting to tap them, and that our best days are still ahead of us. We're in the business of systemic, long-range change to expand opportunities for all Rhode Islanders. We're working hard in collaboration with many of you to create a state and a region where every person benefits from flourishing neighborhoods and downtowns, from restored and protected natural resources, from access to a variety of affordable housing and transportation options, and also where people are able to have access to a just, thriving, and resilient economy. Now, these are lofty goals, but I think they are attainable, and they're certainly worth pursuing. There's been a lot of smart growth progress recently, despite the disruptive upheaval kind of times we've been going through and that we're all navigating through. Our progress includes several things the governor mentioned. The very low unemployment rate we have today, the major decline we've seen in our unemployment rate, Moody's ranking of us as one of the best bounce-back states in the country. Also, some of the things that are in the current budget are part of, I think, the ongoing progress we're seeing, and that includes the state's new commitment to the state historic tax credit, which we've long championed, expanded commitment the governor outlined very clearly on affordable housing. And then in the last few years, we've had an adoption of some visionary plans and reports that are now poised for implementation. And those include the Transit Master Plan, the Bicycle Mobility Plan, and the Forest Values Report. Now, we're not in the age of Aquarius yet, or the dawning of the age of Aquarius. That's probably an old fart kind of illusion, but or the age of Nirvana. We still have some festering economic, social justice, and climate problems that need to be confronted. For example, we still have many vacant and underutilized buildings, especially in our downtown and Main Street districts. We still have an acute shortage of housing, which we've already discussed. Our housing production rate is only about 1/3 of what it should be, based on an analysis by Housing Works Rhode Island and Rhode Island Housing of several years ago. And again, citing Housing Works Rhode Island, a great partner of ours, about half of Rhode Island's renters are cost burdened. We still have significant racial and social inequity, as the governor acknowledged, and as he's fighting hard to overcome, in terms of income and home ownership levels, lifespan, general health status, and even neighborhood tree cover. And of course, we share with the rest of the nation the problems of increasing inflation and street violence. But I think we have a lot more upside than downside right now. And shame on us if we don't very systematically, aggressively, and creatively capitalize on what may be a short window of opportunity to achieve major progress for all Rhode Islanders. And in that regard, I compliment the governor for his setting forth a 2030 plan, for engaging us and many others in this room in developing that plan, and for looking beyond the next election to the next decade, which I think is certainly part of the Grow Smart Rhode Island ethos. So, what are some of the key opportunities over the next several years from our perspective? Certainly one opportunity is the huge infusion of federal funding, including a record amount of federal funding available for transit and a heck of a lot of funding from the feds available for infrastructure investments. Also, another opportunity is the state's commitment to a number of our key issues. The $250 million the governor mentioned in state commitment to affordable housing funding. Nearly $50 million, assuming this proposed budget is adopted, nearly $50 million in the last two budget cycles allocated to the state historic tax credit program after 8 years of kind of being in the desert for the historic tax credit program. A $5 million allocation to Main Street revitalization. $4.5 million to the Municipal Infrastructure Grant Program. We'd like to see a lot more, but it's a good down payment. In addition, in recent years, we've seen the establishment of the first ever State Forest Conservation Commission, serious deliberations right now about major reforms to our housing and land use policies by two state commissions, one of which I'm serving on and both of which I think we're influencing. We have an act on climate now that is a prod for a greener, more pedestrian and bike-friendly approach to transportation policy and transportation investments. So, we've got a lot of opportunities. How do we capitalize on them? Again, I go back to the 4 C's, and cash being a necessary and critical condition, but not a sufficient condition to capitalize on these opportunities. When it comes to creativity, another one of my 4 C's, it's essential to deal with our changed circumstances of daily living. We are not the same state, the same society as we were a few years ago, and we're probably going to continue to evolve in a somewhat different direction, hopefully positive. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a major authoritatively documented increase in remote working and heightened demand for outdoor activity, and Mike Lydon's going to be talking to you a lot more about that, especially demand for biking and walking. There's also a growing demand for a more opportunity-rich, just, and equitable society. And we need ongoing creativity in the ocean state to strengthen our resilience to climate change and to capitalize on our leadership role in offshore wind. And creativity in policymaking is more important than ever as well. In the area of housing, for instance, Grow Smart Rhode Island believes that we have to add more carrots to the existing sticks to encourage municipalities and neighborhoods to embrace more multifamily housing development. And we should recognize that expanding housing, transportation, and community revitalization opportunities requires silo busting and integration of each of these objectives with themselves and with innovative land use techniques and zoning reforms. On the capacity front, we can't automatically expect Rhode Island's numerous understaffed municipal planning departments, many, not all, but many with no economic development or housing expertise, to single-handedly advance big infrastructure and redevelopment and multifamily housing projects. So we need more intentional and flexible state, municipal, private sector partnerships and more direct state technical assistance to municipalities. These will be indispensable to changing the facts on the ground. As a post-pandemic period hopefully is emerging, Grow Smart Rhode Island has developed ambitious, multifaceted policy reform agenda. It's spelled out in detail in our 2022 Policy Priorities document, which is available both on our website and outside at the registration desk. I want to walk you through just some of our agenda's highlights, all of which address and require one or more of the 4 C's. First, we are committed to confronting, along with the governor and many others in this room, Rhode Island's housing supply and affordability crisis. and our state's related lack of population growth, although we did have some, and I know it's in a little bit of dispute, but I think it's real. And I'm pleased to see a lot of it was in our cities. So this is why we support major state investments in affordable and workforce housing. It's also why we support enactment of a housing production incentive program modeled on Massachusetts' 40R law to expand multifamily housing production in smart growth locations. Municipalities have kind of a built-in reluctance to invest in housing, affordable or otherwise, because they view the kids who come with that housing as a net fiscal drain, which is very short-sighted and unfortunate. But in many ways, there's a kernel of truth to that. So the state has to step up and alleviate some of that concern and some of that barrier. Another key ingredient for addressing our housing crisis is greater capitalization of the Municipal Infrastructure Grant Program. We recommend it be capitalized at $20 million a year for at least 3 years. And we're strong advocates for Rhode Island establishing a Community Development Technical Assistance Agency to help local communities and developers assemble the complicated financial packages that are often required for mixed income, mixed use, and affordable housing developments. It's not uncommon, and Barbara Sokoloff and others in this room can tell you, for a mixed income affordable housing development to require 8 to 10 different sources of funding. And that can be pretty daunting to assemble without some guidance and assistance. We remain strong advocates for more transit-oriented development, and that's very clearly related in our minds to expanding the supply of housing in Rhode Island. It's a form of development, TOD is, that depends on coordinating, land use policy, housing policy, transit policy, and transit and housing investments, including oftentimes the use of tax increment financing. TODs can simultaneously address several of Rhode Island's challenges, including the need for more affordable and workforce housing, the expansion of affordable transportation choices, added convenience in accessing many of daily life's basic services and amenities, and revitalization of our downtowns, our main streets, and our key transportation corridors. And there is TOD potential across the state, and there's some TOD going on in many different parts of the state, from Woonsocket to Westerly. A 2019 study by GrowSmart Rhode Island, Housing Works Rhode Island, and Roger Williams University revealed this potential. But to tap it, we're exploring a new Massachusetts program called 40A. Massachusetts has a lot of these 40 programs. 40A that provides state financial incentives for TOD development in certain localities. Now, related to TOD is aggressive implementation of the state's visionary and ambitious transit master plan and bike mobility plan, especially the recommendation of the TMP for a either light rail system or a dedicated bus rapid transit system between Central Falls and Warwick, the most populous part of our great state. We are also very bullish about the bike mobility plan's recommendation that there be a doubling of the state's commitment, financial commitment to bike and ped infrastructure over the next several years. Now, in order to achieve some of these transportation objectives, one of the things the state is going to have to look at carefully is the state match for this huge amount of new transit funding from the feds. My colleague John Flaherty, who is our expert on all things transportation, tells me that that state match could be anywhere from 20% to 50% for any given project, depending on the funding source. So we encourage the state to look closely at that as well. Another key GrowSmart Rhode Island focus is to help people in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods more effectively control their destiny, control their neighborhood's destiny. Influence their local land use development decisions, especially. And we are honoring the Newport Hes later today for their recent success on this front. When it comes to community revitalization, we are intent on launching something called Main Street Rhode Island. And my staff colleague, Jillian Finkel, has been our leader on that and can give you all kinds of chapter and verse about the benefits of that kind of a coordinating entity for the numerous Main Street and downtown-focused initiatives around the state. You can learn much more about this initiative today. There's going to be a specific workshop about it. There are also a number of people from the Main Street Rhode Island Steering Committee who are primed to answer your questions and talk to you more about this vision, which is becoming a reality. And to accelerate and deepen community revitalization, we advocate several new capacity-enhancing tools beyond Main Street Rhode Island, and they include a local development fellows program to assist communities with complicated redevelopment projects, more training for local land use decision makers, something we in state planning and others have been involved in for many years, increased funding for localities to expand their planning and economic development staffs, reestablishment of state planning's old circuit rider technical assistance program that some of you may be familiar with, and promotion of model land use ordinances by groups such as ours on topics ranging from conservation development to solar siting and village zoning. And a member of our staff, Scott Millar, has been in the lead on developing a number of these kinds of model ordinances. Finally, we will continue leading the charge for financial carrots and sticks that shift development of major solar projects away from our prime forest and farmland, and simultaneously we'll be seeking aggressive implementation of the Forest Conservation Act that the governor supported, signed into law, and that we played a major role in bringing forward. So, overall, this is a time when we can all have a big positive impact on Rhode Island's economic, social, and environmental trajectory. But it will take a proverbial village to make all this happen, which is why we welcome and need the continued partnerships we have with so many of you. So thank you very much, and on to the rest of the program. And I want to acknowledge Mayor Elorza and his leadership on a lot of the issues we care about, especially housing and his Great Streets Initiative. I don't know, Mayor, if we have an opportunity for you to address this now. We're running a little late, but we'll see if maybe a little later we can hear from you if that's okay.